you'd never known it wasn't important, right? So anyway, it is shepherds asking them what city they were and in which they came, which being answered would lead on to a conversation was what he wanted. So boom, he's got one answer already fulfilled. He's in the right area, right? 5 says, and he said unto them, know ye Laban the son of Nahor? Know of him. It's just boom. How many things can line up for you here, right? Now, the fact that Jacob knew and he said unto them, no, he's the son of Laban. He was the son of Bethuel, the grandson of Nahor, and grandsons of their grandfather. It was a very common practice there. Nahor might be more known than Bethuel, and Haran being Nahor's city. Nahor established the city of Haran. So what Jacob is doing there, you can find that in Genesis 24, and they didn't say anything but not Bethuel's, his mother's father, but Laban, her brothers, inquired after, perhaps because Bethuel was probably dead at this time. It's been a number of years, right? And Laban was the head of the family and well known to begin with by his mother Rebekah. But speaking in the generations, because God, even Jesus says it's important for us to know our generations, to know our families, right? Heritage. He could speak about the beginning, the middle, and then the end, and that would make they would immediately know that he was family. He was related because it was forbidden otherwise to speak of another family and claim it, or claim kin to it without knowing the history. And most of the people would not know the history if he were a stranger coming in, right? So his mother had prepared him well. He knew his family history, knew where she came from, and so they're going to oh, he's part of the family, right? And that's why I put there that the elders would names that would be inquired would note he was family. He was a relative. In verse 60, and he said unto them, is he well? And they said, he is well. And behold, Rachel his daughter cometh with the sheep. Now, when he said unto them, he is well, in good health is what he's asking, right? Him and his family, or is he at peace unto him? Can also be, you'll see that one later in Genesis and then Deuteronomy, okay? And it also can mean, does he enjoy prosperity and happiness? This wording was used in the Eastern nations and is still used today. If you go over there, they'll ask you, are you well? Right? They're not asking if you're sick. They're asking, are you enjoying life? Are you, doing well? Generally.
Have you been doing?
Yes, right. In other words, right. Okay. By Jacob asking, it shows respect to and his family, because he didn't burst into why he was there. He wanted to know how they were doing. Well, that's a courtesy. And it shows honor and respect to that family. And the shepherds would have picked up on that really quick. Like, wow, this guy's, really doing well, So here we go. And behold, Rachel, his daughter, cometh with the sheep. Now, at this very instant, she was coming out of the city with her father's flock, an instance of great humility, diligence, and simplicity. This was very providential to Jacob. Think about this. Not only does he get to see, he knows his family there, he knows Laban's there, now he knows the daughter of Laban, right? And they would have been distanced enough by different mothers that it could be a possible wife for him down the road. But the fact that she's taking care of the flock. A shepherd found a woman that can take care of the sheep.
Yeah.
Boy, was that going to be a big help. You understand what I'm saying here? She knows as much about it as me, and she can handle them. Well, that's a plus for a guy in that occupation, right? Like, okay, this is a winner here, right? So anyway, the shepherds had already watered their flocks, and the fact that she came from the city to water lets us know that the well was scheduled for use by the community. The outside flocks would come in early, right? So they could take them back to the pastures to go ahead and fatten up. The ones that were kept in the city were probably for food use and things, right? Or breeding, because it has to be inside the wall for the animals. The shepherds can only take care of so many. So she's bringing the younger ones out to water. So they get used to the well, where the well is. So she's part of the whole process. and it would have been, and they would be very respectful because they know who she is, okay? The daughter of the man, the grandfather that owns the town, you know? You don't wanna mess with this, right? You get my meaning, right? So, and it says, lo, 7, he said, lo, it is yet high day, neither is it time that the cattle should be gathered together. Water thee the sheep and go and feed them. Now, when he said this is high day, noonday, when the sun is highest, at which the times in those hot countries, flocks used to be made to lay down in shady places and by still waters. This would be considered still waters, right? Which the allusion is in Psalms 23:2. You remember that and now I lay me down in
Greater pastures.
greener pastures and by the still waters, you know. That's what it's alluding to here. It's the peace of the day during the hot of the day that you have rest. You know. And siesta time, okay? In this instance, however, the sun was still very high, and there was a great deal of the day yet to come. So the phrase is, yet the day is great, or much, a long time until nighttime is what he's trying to get across. And should be gathered together, right? And it's to come off the pastures to be brought home and put into folds, which was the protective areas, which was usually done in the evening. Jacob's very familiar with the care of the livestock. By him saying this, he's not saying it to them, and I'll get it, yeah, let me go into this. And he says, water you the sheep and go and feed them. First we see that verse 2 and 3 is an observation by Jacob and not an action, okay? It sounds like he's telling them to, but he's not. He's just observing, okay? Jacob's talking out loud, most likely. He's like, they should be already out there doing this. You know, what are they doing waiting here, right? Turn out of the well and drink and lay them out to pastures and feed them until night is coming on. This he said not in an authoritative way or necessarily or manner. As a shepherd himself, he knew what was proper to be done. And this appears by the shepherds, no offense, they returned a civil answer, right? And they said, we cannot until all the flocks be gathered together, until they roll the stone away from the well's mouth, and then we water the sheep. But before it said they did, right? What is not in here that I found in some of the original older writings and some of the translations, that it was sets of flocks coming in at different times. So they would water one group, that group would be moved out, and next ones would come in, and then the town would come in, right? So it's a process. It's a assembly line process, right? And then they would block the water so that it would build back up, okay? And they said we cannot until the flocks be gathered. In order to prevent the consequences of too frequent exposure in places where the water is scarce, right? The well is not only covered, but it is customary to have all the flocks collected around it before the covering is removed in the presence of the owner or one of his representatives. So it immediately tells you that 2 of the first 2 herds that were out there belonged to Laban. Those were his shepherds because they rolled the rock, right? These others are waiting until Rachel gets there so they can roll it away in her presence, so they're not stealing water.
Yeah.
And water can be a high commodity in this desert area in the grasslands, okay? There's a lot in here that people don't always pick up on, right? I'm like, oh, okay, there's some sequencing going on here. So, and it was this reason that those who were reposing at the well of Haran with the 3 flocks were waiting the arrival of Rachel. So there's sets, is what we're trying to see here, okay? So he's observing all this, and he's talking with them, and it's just a common banner, right? This was an established custom that the flocks must be assembled before the stone rolled away, right? For the purpose of watering the cattle also later, okay? This may have been required to ensure a fair distribution of water to all parties, and especially to those who were too weak to roll away the stones. Jacob is not familiar with the customs of these people. He's observing and he doesn't understand. He knows they need to be watered and then taken back out, finish, feeding, and so they'll be calm at night. And he's like, okay, I'm seeing something different here, because where they were at, they had plenty of wells, right? And this is a whole different climate, so he's having to adjust. It also is a clue for something that's going to happen later, okay? All right, and 9 says, and while he yet spake with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them, right? Jacob was thus talking with the shepherds as she arrives, okay? She came from with her father's sheep to water them at the well. She was within sight when Jacob first addressed the shepherds. like a distance, right? But now she was come to the well or near it with the sheep before her. She's herding them, right? She kept them. She was the shepherdess, right? The chief one. She might have servants under her to do some parts of the office of a shepherd, not so fit for her to do. It may be Laban's sons for some he had, and we find that in Genesis 31:1 later, as we get 2 chapters down. Were not as yet grown up, and therefore the flock was committed to the care of Rachel, the younger daughter, whose name signifies a sheep. It means a young sheep. Her name Rachel is. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, I put a note there. The Jews say that the hand of God was upon Laban's flock, and there were but few left, so that he put away his shepherds. The other ones were attending the other flocks, right? And those flocks were not always sheep. They used the word sheep in the Bible. Many times it was goats, right? It would have been mountain goats, or it would have been milk goats, and they would have all been considered sheep in the Bible in the translations. Okay, so there was different groups coming in. Okay, now, so as it came that and what remained he put before his daughter Rachel, and that we'll see some more reference to that in Genesis 30:30 when we get there. So 10 says, and it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, and that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Okay? That Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth, either with the help of the shepherds or by himself by his own strength, which the Jewish writers say amazed the shepherds that he should do that himself, which required their united strength to do. This is a big boy. If he can roll the stone away by himself, you don't want to mess with him, right? And I'm sure. Well, I got some. The Targum. Jonathan says he did it with one arm, and Zechariah. As a man takes off the lid and cover of a pot. And this is other histories that, not biblical historians, but other historians that have written about it. And like, well, we know Esau, right? Let me go back real quick. If you go back to Esau, right? Esau was known for his prowess in hunting, right? He killed his first stag with a hand knife. He chased it down and killed it. These are some big boys, some really blessed boys of God, of Abraham, Isaac. It plays in later in the 12 tribes as we get in there, right? And I'll bring that up again. I'll remind you that we talked about this before. This is not a normal people. I mean, he just walked 140 miles, 200 miles, something like that. And he was still in good health. He's a blessed person. God took care of everything.
That was probably nothing to him.
Yeah, it was nothing, Yeah. Well, we would see it later in the line of Christ, all of these great strengths of men and feats. I mean, even David killed a Goliath, right? He was a little boy. Right? So think about it. He killed a lion with this. Right? These all play down, okay? All right. So, let's go to 4. Oh, the phrase, and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. He did partly out of respect to his relationship with them, right? And partly that he might be taken notice by Rachel. He's showing off.
Sure.
He's like, I don't need those guys. Right? Verse 11. And Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. Now, most of the modern translations of this and interpretations is that he was very forward and in. No, what this is, which he did in a way of courtesy and civility, that was done after he had acquainted her with his relationship to her. He saluted her or showed honor and respect her. He kissed her on the cheek like the French. They still do that in the Asian countries. That's a sign of respect and loyalty and honor.
Yeah, because later her dad kisses Jacob.
Yes, exactly. Right. So, but people, you wouldn't believe how much.
Oh, they fell in love and he rode right up and planted one another.
Yeah, right. And that's what you hear.
That would have got him lynched, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'd have been a bunch of them after him by now, right? He lifted up his voice and wept. No, this not wept is like cried. He's being very boisterous with joy. The providence of God that had brought him to such an opportunity to place in the sight of his people, of a person so nearly related to him, right? And who he hoped would be his wife, because he was very fair to look upon, was the person designed of God for him, he believed. I mean, she was a shepherdess. What more could you ask for? You know, he wasn't a hunter. And Jacob, a shepherd, and her, a shepherdess, a perfect match. I think I'd have been a little happy too, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this couldn't have worked out. God, bless God, right? And we should, when things happen good for us, it's because somebody else took care of it, not us, right? So verse 12 says, and Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother, and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. All right. When you say that he was her father's brother, his nephew by his sister is what he's saying, right? They didn't have the word nephew in the time period, okay? For such were sometimes called brethren, as Lot, Abraham's brother's son, is called his brother, right? And that was in Genesis 14:12, and I made a reference back to that, because he was considered Abraham's son or brother, right? When he wasn't, he was his nephew, but it would take on the title of his father, right? So everybody would understand this in this culture in this time period, okay? All right. And that he was Rebekah's son, sister to her father, aunt to her, and whose name and relation she doubtlessly knew full well, right? It's only been 40 years or something like that, or something. You know, it's been a while, but they would have known, and since Abraham knew where they're at, and Isaac knew where they were from, contact through travelers, and they would send information back and forth about the families. That's why Rebekah knew where to send Jacob. She already knew all this lineage. She knew who the girls were born in, which side of the family, and which brother, and she's like, oh no, I got this set up. She got it already. Said, okay, here's what you need to know. Yeah, right. So it all happened for a purpose, right? All right. She ran and told her father, and she ran and told her father, leaving the care of the flock with Jacob. Rebekah, in a like case, to go back to Rebekah, this is Rachel now, right? Rebekah, in a like case, ran and told her mother. That's in Genesis 24:28, which is most unusual for daughters to do. But here Rachel runs and tells her father. Her mother was very probably dead by this time, as the Jewish writers account. Okay, so I'll go. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and this is my opinion. Okay, so Jacob has just fell into everything that he had been asking God for. Right down the line, right? Then he sees her run off. Take care of the flock, I'll go prepare, right? Just like his mother did when the servant of Abraham showed up. Right? Do you remember that? When she ran to her father's place to prepare a place for them, and and Laban ran out to the servant and asked him, well, you're right? He's seeing exactly the same story happening in front of him that he was told. You think that he doesn't think this is a blessing from God? Exactly the same thing is happening. Wow, right? So that's my opinion. I'm thinking if I was in his shoes, right? I would go, uh-oh, deja vu. I'm just playing out the whole thing over. The other thing that we need to remember, she looked just like his mother.
Yeah.
And sons usually pick someone in their family that looks like their mothers and like their fathers. And my two daughters messed up because neither one of them looked like me. Smart girls, right? So anyway, but that's a very common occurrence in populations. All right, so I love this part of it though. Anyway, and she ran and told him, right? And it came to pass when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him. Here we are, repeating it again, right? And embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house, and he told Laban all these things. He recounted everything that just happened, what his mother had told him, what his father had blessed him with, right? He's just kind of spilling the beans, his family, right? Not always a smart thing to do, but anyway. And it came to pass when Laban heard these tidings that there was such a man thus related to him and what he had done there, and he had rolled away the stone. That was pretty impressive. And watered his flock, and the Jewish writers make this report chiefly to respect his great strength in this instance. Laban's like, oh man, I want him on my side. Now, if you go back and read back in that Genesis 14, Laban, when they came, Abraham's servant came and got her, what did he give Laban? You guys remember? Gold bracelets and
Oh, that's right.
silks, and Laban's going, uh-oh, that's Abraham's son's son. There's going to be gifts. He's greedy, so he's old, and he's going, huh? I want first dibs. The daughter didn't come back out. You notice that? Prepare, right? Okay. He embraced him and kissed him, and he's treating him like he's a lost son, right? Other interpreters represent this done with Avaricus views, and then he expected Jacob had brought presents with him, as I told you, as pieces of gold or pearls or jewels, such like precious things Abraham's servant brought and gave him when he came for Rebekah, and that's Genesis 24:53. You can go look at it. He hasn't changed much, has he?
No.
If you go back and read those two sections of that book, of Genesis 14 and 20, you see of somebody that's very worldly, very
Materialistic.
There you go, the big word. I like that. And when three of you say
Jinx.
it, it's done. Okay. So, and he told Laban all these things, how he was sent here by his parents on account of the anger and hatred of his brother Esau, right? Because he had got the birthright and the blessing from him. And that's something you should advertise.
Right.
It caused problems down the road here, right? I'm sorry. Yeah. It's unlocked. Everything's unlocked. Yep. There you go, though. So, and how God had appeared to him at Luz, and the promise that he had made him, how providentially he had met with Rachel to well, and perhaps might find himself a wife, but it would have been stated in such a manner as it was time for him to settle down. He needs to take care of things, right? And okay. And Laban said to him, surely thou art my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him the space of a month. And I'm going to stop it right there tonight. Well, I got a few more. I'll do a couple more. Anyway, the thing that I didn't put in here, when you say thou art my bone and my flesh, it means your blood kin, right? And yeah, you're welcome to be here, right? And but after a month, you're kind of overstaying your welcome.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure that Jacob would have been the first to go to the fields and take the sheep out. He's not one. He didn't sit around at his parents' place, did he? He was always in the fields with the sheep. And Laban said unto Jacob, because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? So that tells you he has been helping out. And helping out where he can and assisting, right? Tell me what shall thy wages be, right? Now, he says, because thou art my brother or nephew, his sister's son, kinfolk, blood relation, we got that part. And that shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Laban is saying that even though we have the nearness of kin, was no reason why he should serve him freely or for nothing, right? But rather why he should be more kind to him than to a stranger and give him better wages for his service. You take care of family first, is what. Tell me what shall thy wages be, either by the day or month or year, signifying he was willing to give him anything that was just and reasonable, which was very well spoken, and this gave Jacob a fair opportunity of speaking his mind more freely to him for presenting the real reason specifically for which he came. Jacob was very patient. Let him bring it up. Because what he's going to ask for is a whole different thing there, right? Because now we find out some more information. In 16 it says, and Laban had two daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, was Rachel, right? Now the name of the elder was Leah, which signifies labor or weariness, okay? She's one that labored and was weary. Not of great stamina, I guess is the word I want to use. Or she took care of the house. And with brothers and sisters and a father, and only one other sister that was gone with the flock, guess who, the whole care of the place was left to, and the cooking and the presiding, because the men surely didn't do it, right? All right, so that's her, and then what's the other one there? And the name of the younger was Rachel, being mentioned whom Jacob met with the well, Genesis 29:10, and signifies a sheep as before observed. This would have been a young sheep, not a bred
lamb.
one, a lamb. Yeah, basically a doe, I guess they call them, right? A doe.
No,
don't
know
they're
about
kids.
Kids, right? So she was young, right? But
Female sheep, a ewe.
yeah,
Female sheep is a ewe,
Ewe.
but a young one is a kid.
kid, right? And then after they've had a bred, they become a doe, correct?
No,
What's a
Ewe.
doe? There's a doe in there too, though. Oh, that's goats. I'm sorry.
That's a goat.
That's a goat.
Okay.
I'm changing characters. All right. Anyway, all right. So I'm gonna do 7. I'll do 17 and 18. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. Now, Leah was tender-eyed. It means blurry-eyed, had a moisture in them, which made them red, and so she was not so agreeable to look at. Her tender eyes could not bear the open air and the light of the sun. She had photophobia. That's what it's called. They didn't know what it was at that time. But if she got into bright sunlight, they would automatically redden around, or it would start tearing. And air and sunlight, any type of pollen, so she looked bad, swollen all the time, right? And it's nothing she could control. It's a genetic defect, is what it is, right? And that's not very helpful looking after the strange sheep of her father. She couldn't do it. She couldn't hardly see to walk out there in the fields. So that's why she was at the house. And I'm sure by cooking and cleaning in the house, the smoke from the fires alone kept her eyes red all the time, So she just didn't have things going well for her, as it turns out, okay? But Rachel was beautiful and well favored in all parts, in the form of her features, in her shape and stature, and in her complexion, her hair black, and her flesh white and ruddy, as Ben Melech observes, and he's another historian, okay? Now, you want me to go ahead and start this, or we gonna wait? What time we got? We got time?
It is 8:40.
Okay. I'll go a little more. All right. And in verse 18 says, And Jacob loved Rachel, and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. Pretty plain speech, right? As he seems to have done from the moment he saw her at the well. He's been infatuated with her, right? He had to do the one-arm rock-moving stunt, right? She being beautiful, modest, humble, affable, diligent, and industrious. She was all the qualities of a shepherdess, right? He's like, oh, perfect, right? We must know here that Jacob's foundation for a wife was based on the attributes of his own mother, and he saw all of these in Rachel. Because if we go back, she prepared the meal that was a savory meat for her husband, didn't she? She was still doing all the cooking. Abraham's how old at that time? Do you remember? Not Abraham, Isaac.
80.
100.
100 and something.
110. And he thought he was dying because his brother died at that time, okay, at the same age. That's why he was, we know later on that he lived another 40 years. Anyway, blind though. Couldn't see because of the cataracts and things. But anyway, so she was still very active. And she was only, what, 20 years younger than him? So that had been in her 80s. Almost 90, right? And she was full steam ahead, right? Wonder where the son's got the vitality from. Okay. So anyway, he says, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel and Ron. This signifying that he's desired no other wages for his service than that he might have her for his wife at the end of 7 years' servitude, which he was very willing to oblige himself to on that condition. And that becomes so important later. Because Jacob had no money to give as a dowry. When you ask for one of the daughters, you would the husband or the father of the bride or bridegroom would present a dowry to the family. Well, he's all by himself. He didn't have anything with him, even though he inherited everything back in the country. with the blessing. He's gonna be the head of the tribe, you know? He didn't take anything with him, right? So, it was customary, he selected or proposed servitude instead of it. He submits himself thus according to the custom of the times. Some scholars believe it was also divine servitude for the actions against his brother Esau and the lying trickery he conducted against his father Isaac. God sent him there without any provisions. Like, you have to pay a price, karma. We call it karma, right? But it's God's divine. He's like, you're going to pay for this one way or the other. And you might as well do servitude. Now, you guys understand what servitude is in this time period, even in Abraham's time, and servitude was when you found someone that didn't have any way of providing for themselves, they would place themselves in servitude for 7 years. And at the end of that time period, whatever they had earned or made or profited from, and that they served you, you would give them a percentage of that, and they could go on their own or they could stay. But they were no longer in servitude. They were part of your family group or your tribe. Does that make sense? But everybody earned their way. And I think that was not a bad deal. You could earn your way and take yourself from a low level up to a different level and provide for yourself and your family, right? But it wasn't slavery, because
It was a job.
It was
You
a
got
job.
paid for at the end.
exactly, that it's a job, right? It's a delayed, it's like any job though, right?
Delayed gratification.
Like you though. You started out there, right? And in a year, a little over a year, right?
No, it
less
hasn't
than
even
a
been a year yet.
3 steps,
I've already gone up.
but
3.
you served the time periods, and you did your job exceedingly well. You get blessed. That's the way it is. That's what's happening here. Okay. I think. Yeah. Okay. Well, and Laban said, "It is better that I give her to thee than I should give her to another man. Abide with me." So what is that? He's being deceitful here. As the Taker Johnson adds, pretending great respect for Jacob, and that he had proposed was very agreeable to him when he meant to impose upon him. The way he states this is like, well, I guess it's better to give you Rachel than to give her to somebody else. He has no respect for her, no honor. You would not say that to the soon-to-be husband of your daughter. He's not even protecting her. And I'm surprised Jacob's so blind in love right now. He can't. Anyway, by which he not only suggests that he preferred him a relation to another man, a stranger, which is probably true, but as if he did not insist upon the servitude for her, but would give her to him, unless he means upon the terms proposed, or so it should seem that by what follows. He's like, yeah, whatever. You can have her if you do your time. Not good. He's what he should have done. Anybody would have done
He
this
should have placed more value on his daughter.
on his daughter, and said, if you complete exactly what you proposed, if he's like, no, you can have her. I just want your service, is what he's getting at. He's placating Jacob, like, oh, I need you. You know, you can help build his family. Yeah, it's a con. Anyway. The level of and honor not even provided in this statement of Laban of his daughter. Laban is acting like his own daughters are nothing more than bondmaids. To be done away with if necessary, right? That's terrible. I'm going to stop right there by the time we get things done, because the rest of it gets pretty interesting. But
The next part, Laban's treachery.
I've been, yeah, exactly.
That's what the
Yeah.
Amplified
Oh, it says?
next
Okay,
section
good.
is Laban's treachery.
Because I'm sitting at the hospital and people are snoring and they're waking up and they're doing things, and I'm going through my, and I'm like, I'm seeing this whole thing play out. I'm like,
We stopped at 19, right?
I love being the third person in the room. You know, I'm the hummingbird sitting up on the sill looking like, you're an idiot. You're not even listening. You're being stupid. You know, I mean, all judgmental, but I'm seeing the whole